You're listening to the Lake Seminole Ramblins Fishing Report. I'm your host, local guide Chris Taylor. I want to thank all y'all for listening. Lord knows we've had some kind of weather come through last week. Fire ant mounds are high, rivers muddy, full of wood, and the wind blew. Oh yeah, it got cold too. 1.69 inches of rain at my house on the drain last week. Luckily, we didn't get the tornadoes at the lake like other places in South Georgia got. We're praying for the folks affected in Blakely, Cordele, and Leslie. Man, it sure makes it hard to fish and stuff like that. West winds 15, gusting 25 to 30. Almost makes you want to stay home. Heck, sometimes you have to. The fish have been biting, they have been eating. It's just really hard to actually fish and that kind of stuff. Mr. John Deal reached out to me on Facebook and let us know that Florida side is muddy, it's high, it's full of wood, so don't be hitting no floaters messing up your lower unit. Them things ain't cheap. Thursday, the mouth of Jack's Cut, I tried to go in there. It was clogged, probably 100 yards thick with a hyacinth mat. I didn't even attempt it. Y'all shouldn't either. A lot of that thick wood gets buried up in them hyacinths, and you can really hurt your boat if you try to run through there. So hopefully it's cleaned out, just depends on the wind direction. So keep an eye out for that as well. Water conditions on Lake Seminole, we are looking at just under full pool. They did drop the water just a little bit, about half a foot in the middle of the week, but we've been staying pretty consistent at full pool. Water temperatures, Flint River 68 to 70 degrees, Spring Creek 72 to 74, Chattahoochee running a bit cooler 66 to 68, Fish Pond Drain 72 to 75. The muddiest water is going to be on the main rivers, Flint and the Hooch. Spring Creek does have a little stain, but majority is clear, as well as the drain majority is clear. There's a bit of it that's got some runoff, but it's clearing back up for us. Bass report. About the only bedding fish y'all will find right now is in the rivers. Outside sand in the Flint. I did see an 8-pound fish on the bed on Tuesday. She ain't stayed long though. We fished for her for about an hour and a half. She nosed up a few times. Could not get her to commit. If you stick to a spinnerbait, you will get bit right now. If you leave the bedding fish alone and you stick to the grass lines, you will get bit. I caught a 7-pound fish on a single Colorado spinnerbait, 3/8 ounce. That's what I like to throw. Some folks call it finesse. To me, it's just a regular spinnerbait, but 6-foot scattergrass. Throw it. Make sure you let it fall, and you want to slow roll it so it ticks that grass. Some folks like to bury it and snatch it out as well. Sometimes that works. A lot of times it works. Sometimes they do want it ticking. Another thing, make sure you are letting your bait fall. Sometimes they'll follow it all the way to the boat. You need to let it fall to trigger that strike. So, 7-pound fish. She was still hanging around some sand, but so we still have fish all over the lake that are on the sand or hanging around the sand, and then some that are transitioning over to shad. The shad are starting to move around to spawn. Randy Weaver talked to me yesterday, reported catching some good stripers, okay, not hybrid stripers, on the grass lines in the creek. I'm not going to tell you exactly where, but pretty close to some islands in the creek there. Stripers pulling into an area means there are shad there, and they're about to spawn. Now, the largemouth weren't there yet, but they should be there at least by the full moon. What's the big deal with shad? Shad. You hear me talk about shad a lot. Had somebody ask me the other day, what does it matter about shad? Y'all, shad is the primary food source here. Shad is everything. So these big mamas, they follow the shad. It's what they feed on, keeps them fat. So find the shad, and you find that big Seminole mama. So again, with the shad spawn, you hear me talking about that a lot. When the bass are done bedding, they come off. The shad start spawning about 70-degree water. So them fish, they ain't ate. They hungry. They come off. And the shad are vulnerable when they spawn. So they just tear them up. And that's why I'm, I hate to say obsessed, but I love fishing the shad spawn. I love throwing a spinnerbait. So when you're throwing a spinnerbait, them shad will stick to your bait. And when the fish comes up, they pull off, your spinnerbait's left, you catch the fish. So that's the whole deal with Shad Spawn in April. That's why I keep talking about it. And you'll hear me continue to talk about it as it starts up and start catching some real good fish. Speckled perch, crappie report. Crappie fishing's good on the grass lines in the Flint River right now. Reports the limits being caught in 10 to 12 foot of water. Of course, these are on jigs, black and chartreuse, twister tails. Idle down these grass lines. Use your electronics and stop when you find them stacked. So just for the people that don't know, speckled perch, crappie, they stack on top of each other vertically in the water column. So if you're idling around, even if your graph is 30 years old, you will see hook echo signatures stacking on top of each other. That is crappie. So stop right there, start fishing. I talked to Randy Weaver yesterday. He said he caught 15 or 20 on these grass lines. None of them had any eggs, so they were all spawned out. So they should be settling to where you should be able to catch them pretty good along those grass lines. Shell crackers are on fire right now, y'all. Our friends Wade and Dawn Faircloth, they're the owners of Lake Seminole Outdoors, our favorite store around the four-way area on the lake. They caught a nice mess of red ears using red wigglers. That reminds me, if y'all need bait, make sure to stop in over there. They have an awesome tackle store with a great selection of not only baits and tackles and rods and reels, but meats, grocery gifts, sunglasses, propane, feed. Y'all, they've got everything. They've got some really cool stuff, some little trinkets and gifts you can take home. Miss Dawn, she makes up some awesome dinner and supper. Dinner is lunch for you non-Southerners out there. My granddaddy told me one time, Chris, lunch is a Yankee word. Taylors ain't Yankees. So that's what we say, dinner. But anyway, Miss Dawn, she makes up really good food, and they are now open on Sundays from 10 to 2, so you can go over there and get you some dinner on Sunday after church. But anyway, back to the fishing, y'all. Look around in the drain at Spring Creek. Get you some red ears, good lord. Get you some red wigglers from over there at LSO, or get you some beetle spins. And you want to look around the sandbars. Obviously, they're pretty obvious when you find them. They got shells in their bed. But sometimes they'll bed in these big pockets in the grass, so don't overlook those areas. Once you find them, of course, be quiet in this clear water. I keep talking about that. No big corks, no big lead. You got to be quiet because you'll spook them off. But once you get on them, you can catch a mess real quick. So set the boat up, keep it quiet, catch a limit. Fishing at Lake Seminole is great right now, y'all. The winds will finally be easing off in the coming weeks, setting us up for a phenomenal summer. I appreciate all y'all listening. We have some new content, some new stuff that we're going to be adding to the show in the next few weeks, including guest appearances and giveaways, one of those being from local legend, guide, red man champion, Randy Weaver. He will be telling us some throwback stories and giving us his input on what we need to be doing every week. So make sure you give us a follow so you can hear this valuable information that we're going to be giving you. Thank y'all very much for listening to our growing show. I'm your host, Chris Taylor, local Lake Seminole guide, and you've been listening to the Lake Seminole Ramblins Fishing Report. Until next week, we'll see y'all later. For all your local Lake Seminole needs for tackle, lodging, guide service, and more, make sure to visit us on the web at www.seminolefishingreports.com.